All right, good morning again from Silicon Valley, I'm Mindbridge CEO. And today we have the pleasure to have Bill Johnson, Group Vice President and Chief Transformation Officer of DCP Midstream. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Marco. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. And again, this is a Mind Chat that is under the umbrella of the Corporate Startup Stars Award. And without disclosing too much, you guys as DCP Midstream are one of the awarded companies. So congratulations for that. And so here's a quick, reminder of the Corporate Startup Stars.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're definitely honored to be being recognized this year. So thank you.
A pleasure, and we're very excited about this conversation because your role also as a Chief Transformation Officer of energy midstream companies means a lot. So we will love to address what this transformation is all about and from what to where. So excited to talk about that. And maybe, again, for the wider audience, describe us what is DCP Midstream business, in particular for people who are non-technical, kind of who are your clients of the entity as well.
Sure. So DCP Midstream, we're a midstream company. We're an energy company. We're largely in the natural gas gathering and processing, and then a little bit of transportation business for gas and natural gas liquids. So we're called midstream because we sit kind of in the middle of the energy value chain. So we are not a producer of the resource. We provide services to those producers. So we sit between the producer of the resource and the end user, who would be a utility or a refiner or a chemicals producer kind of company. So we take natural gas from people that produce it at wells, and we gather it and process it, which means we clean it and we standardize it, and we be used again by utilities to make electricity, or used in people's homes for heating and cooking and water heating and things like that. So we're basically taking the gas and making it ready to be used and used safely by people across the country.
And this is way ahead, but it's funny because today I was listening to NPR. Most of the Bay Area actually today is supposed to go gas-free, at least for new constructions from 2021. So obviously we're going to talk about the transformation, and I'm sure is part of that flow. You're a U.S.-based company, and you are based out of Denver, correct?
Yes, our headquarters is in Denver, and we have operations kind of mostly through the center of the U.S. So a lot of operations in Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, New Mexico, kind of country.
An idea of the size of the company. You're a little bit over 2,000 employees and around 10 billion in revenues. Is that right?
Yes, that's about right. Yeah, just under 2,000 employees now. Yep.
Got it. Excellent. So let's talk about your role within the company. So how did you end up at DCP? You've been there a good, maybe 10 years, around 10 years, if I'm correct.
Yeah, just under 10 years. I've been with DCP. I'm an engineer by background. I've worked in the downstream energy business. So I worked in refining and chemicals for a good part of my career before coming to DCP. I'm not a technology person by background, so I've worked in energy company roles in engineering and operations and running business units, and then here 3 or 4 years ago, was really while I was running a business unit that I felt like there was so much opportunity to change how it's a great business that we're in, but it's a very traditional business, and we can tend to be kind of stuck in our ways of doing some things. And so I just saw so much opportunity for change, both technologically, but also, culturally in the business. And so we started doing that in the business unit that I was in, and that sort of turned into a full-time job to help the company really create the future.
Wow, that's a big job. So how do you spend your day as a Chief Transformation Officer?
Well, that's a great question. It's a fun job because it can be different. It can be different every day, and to some extent, I get to do work and work on things that I want to. There's a lot of setting your own agenda in a job like this. So, most of my day is spent really working with the rest of the business unit leaders in the company. So I sit on the staff of the CEO, and so sit with the senior leadership team of the company, and really, like I say, try, kind of continuously reinventing the future of the company, and especially as it relates to our operations and how we think about work being done in the company, our use of technology in the company. So I get to kind of continuously look outside the company and try to bring things in, and then continuously challenge our team internally and incubate ideas internally. Some of our best ideas for innovation have come from our own employees, which has been great. So I get to incubate that from our own existing team, also bring outside ideas in, and kind of constantly challenge the status quo relative to, is there a better, more efficient way to do things, a more effective way to do things, a more technologically enabled way of doing things, or sometimes our innovation or transformation comes by way of just not doing something that we've always done. In some cases, like I say, there's a lot of tradition in history and in companies like this where, sometimes you're doing things that don't really add a lot of value. So like I say, some of our change comes from just stopping doing what we've done before.
Can you give us an example? Because that's fascinating.
Well, I think over time there's a lot of reporting and things that happen. Somebody, me or a business unit leader or the CEO has asked for something. Hey, somebody asked for a report to be done like 10 years ago, and automation is written and things are done and the report is generated, and here we are many years later, and that there's still people working to generate those things, but they're not useful anymore. They're not being used. And so we definitely found some examples, and we found a lot of those examples really those are some of the things that came from the employees, right? I mean, when we asked them, hey, what would you do to make things better, or how would you transform the company? We got some of those kinds of examples, like, hey, we're generating this information, or we're creating this document, and we're not sure anybody's using it. And in some cases, when we went and looked, they were right.
So, a company like yours, I think innovation is at the core and will always be at the core. Give us a sense how you're structured at the C-level. Is there also a chief technology officer? Where does R&D sits within the company? How do you interact as a transformation officer?
Sure. So a company like ours, it's mostly an operating company. So there's not a lot of R&D. We don't have a big R&D budget or an R&D department. And then all of the technology really kind of reports in through my organization. So that's the role I play in the company. So not only responsible for transformation, but so for example, our engineering group that builds all of our projects and takes care of largely takes care of our existing assets. The head of engineering is in my team. Our CIO is in my team. So kind of all of our technology office sits within the team. So
Bill, when you say CIO, the I there is information.
Information, yes. So we don't have specifically a chief technology officer. Really, all the technology in the company is really owned by those two people: our head of engineering, or VP of engineering, and our chief information officer. Which she's a person, and kind of non-traditional for a company like ours. We hired a chief information officer from a Silicon Valley company a couple of years ago, and so she's heavily involved in our transformation as well. It's definitely not a traditional IT department that we run here.
Got it. And when you say transformation, digital, I'm sure, is at the core, but I think probably goes beyond just digital. Can you share some of the highlights of the journey of your digital transformation?
Sure. So yeah, it is largely, and kind of started out as a digital journey. I would say that's one of the highlights, Marco, is one of our early learnings was as much as we saw opportunities with digital, it's not all digital, or that can't solve all your problems. So we work hard on our culture. We work under a framework, and it's not unique to us, but under a framework of people, process, and technology. I think, I learned pretty early on that as much as I thought we had so much opportunity for digital in the company, we also had, we had to really kind of enable and turn on the people in the company around this, and open the culture to innovation. A company like ours, we process natural gas, and it's not dangerous, but it can be if you don't do it right? It's flammable, it can be explosive. So we train people to follow a certain set of procedures and practices, and obviously we're very focused on safety and being a safe and responsible operator. And so we've tended to train people to follow a certain set of rules. And so it's been an interesting cultural journey to kind of open people up and say, hey, it's okay to challenge the rule book. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to allow things to be unsafe, but like we don't want you to just by rote, kind of follow the playbook as it's written. You're allowed to rewrite the playbook as we go. And so we worked hard on the people side to kind of change mindsets. And then we also found, a lot of our work processes, it's an old, and I shouldn't maybe say old, but it's a mature business. And so the way things work was largely the same as it had been, and hey, that was great because things worked, and we kept doing it the same way because it worked. But we found a lot of opportunities in our work processes to make improvements, to drive efficiency, and it's hard for technology to fix that. So going digital, and we talk about this a lot inside the company. It's great if I can make it more on my phone and I can make it more digital. But if the underlying process is bad or inefficient or broken, then I've just got a digitally enabled bad process. And so we've worked hard to fix or work on our processes, really enable the people. And then, yes, of course, there's kind of a digital core to the transformation that we're doing.
How much of that is of your daily job is try to fix to increase efficiencies versus looking at long term? So H1, H2, H3 of looking at new potential business models that might empower the DCP of tomorrow.
So I think that's a great question, and I spend quite a bit of time more kind of in Horizon 2 or Horizon 3, kind of thinking. At the same time, there's still a lot of opportunity for us in optimizing. So a lot of our transformation to date has been around optimizing our existing assets. We sit on an asset portfolio of somewhere between 15 and $20 billion of assets. And so getting a little bit of improvement across that kind of asset base is really leveraging for the earnings power of the company. And so, we've been focused on that, and we talk about that. We've got to get that right to really enable us or give us the right to look at further in the future, new business models, adjacent businesses, and we're having some great discussions about that. Frankly, some of the solutions that we've created to optimize the existing assets, we're seeing some opportunities to partner with people outside to maybe put those into the market, or maybe even be able to provide those as a service to others. Either directly ourselves or through partnerships, either with other big companies or even with some relatively small or earlier stage companies. So it's led to a lot of possibilities. But yeah, to date, most of our effort has been, hey, digitally enabling our workforce and really focus on more efficiency and optimization across the asset base that we have.
And talking about collaboration, let's focus on the ones within the open innovation umbrella. So with their, startups in general, tell us some of the activities that you guys have established in the world of open innovation.
Yeah, so I think about 2 years ago, we formed a little team, and when I say a little team, it's like 2 or 3 people. To really help us on this front, and we actually established kind of a beachhead, a small location there in Silicon Valley, and really started building out relationships that would allow us to participate in open innovation and allow us to source ideas from startups, and but not just startups. So I mean, we made relationships with startups, and both directly through accelerators and incubators, a lot of relationships with VC kind of companies, and then also with universities. And I think especially in energy, there's a few key universities that have relatively big programs around this. And so, we formed this small group. We call it a ventures group. It's not a ventures group that is out actively making investments or taking equity stakes. For us, it's more about finding creative solutions or finding people that are working on problems or doing work that may apply to business issues that we have or opportunities that we have in and around DCP's business. So we're really focused on that. The team has done a great job. I mean, I think we have great relationships, a pretty cool reputation around that team, and it's allowed us to really kind of rapidly be able to pilot new ideas, and in a few cases scale those ideas pretty broadly in the company in a way that makes a difference for us. So that's kind of our model. It's more of a venture client kind of model that gives us access to kind of the ecosystem, not just there in Silicon Valley, but kind of beyond that. There's a kind of a brewing energy startup ecosystem in Houston and Austin and in some other places. And so we've built connections there, and we tend to participate pretty openly. We form a lot of relationships, and we I think some people tend to take the approach of being very narrowly focused and or pretty tight. We tend to participate in a pretty open way, trying to share what we learn and learn from others.
So the investment of your technology ventures is not in equity, but is really into develop or co-develop sometimes, or to grow and to scale some of the project through the collaboration of whether universities more on the research side, or companies in the startup world that you engage for a co-development or a proof of concept that can scale. Correct?
Yes. So we have a handful of co-development type agreements, and then yeah, just a lot of collaboration where as we talked about, we're a big operator of assets. We have a lot of asset data, and so whether it's developing solutions for using artificial intelligence for predictive maintenance or other things like that, we have a lot to bring to the table with the data set and the asset set that we have to offer. So when we see a company doing interesting work, we're usually able to form a pretty productive relationship, either again co-development or just allowing them to use our data or use some of our equipment as kind of a starter set to get something developed.
What do you think about new potential business models? And again, here is probably the H3 or more. What can be, in your range of possibilities? What are you working on? What you're testing on?
Well, I think for us, there's a lot of opportunity around some of those things, and I think when we think about new business models for a company like DCP, like you say, these things are probably pretty far out there in the 5 to 10 years out there. I think we're working a lot on sustainability. So thinking about what's our role in energy transition over time, how do we make sure that we're one of the most sustainable operators of these kinds of assets. Obviously, that means running the assets well, running them reliably, running them safely, running them tightly from an environmental standpoint. And there's a lot of technology that can be applied to that. And I think people that are on the front end of that, there are potential business models around that. I mean, I think if you think a little further out, you read a lot about the potential for a coming hydrogen economy. And again, I think we've got a lot of infrastructure. We've got a lot of pipe. We've got a lot of natural gas available. So you start reading about kind of blue or green hydrogen. And hydrogen is going to have to be transported. There's going to have to be infrastructure around that. That's largely what we do, is operate that kind of infrastructure that transports gases around. So I think we're thinking about a lot of things like that. Doing some early investigation of probably maybe a little nearer term than hydrogen is carbon capture and utilization. So a lot of work around that. And again, hey, you're talking about capturing a gas and doing something to treat it and transporting it. That's what we do for a living every day. We've got a lot of infrastructure on that standpoint. So we're doing a lot of work around that, around how do we, how will we participate in that? How do we reduce the footprint of our existing asset base? And a lot of cool work by the team being done on that front.
Which is a huge trend. I have to say that even compared to last year, I think more than half of our corporate clients are working in some shape or form in similar objectives. Obviously, for you, is also at the core of your business, so it makes perfect sense. As part of your objective is also to create a culture of innovation inside. How do you do that? Tell us some examples of how you're starting using also somewhat also the open innovation channels to help create a culture of innovation.
Yeah, so I think mostly it's a lot of communication, Marco, and we've really opened up the transparency and flow of information culturally in the company. And it's a big difference from the way a company like ours would have operated in the past. I mean, again, mature industrial companies, you might think tend to operate in a little bit of a top-down kind of way, and maybe not really open sort of up and down the organizational lines of communication. We've really opened that up through a number of ways and a number of platforms. I mean, we were a very early adopter of Facebook's workplace product, and we really encourage people across the company to participate on that platform and share ideas and thinking. And we've got lots of examples where people in different parts of the country or different parts of the organization were able to share ideas with each other that had impact on a different part of the business. That there was really just no way to create that communication, via email or kind of the old ways that we communicated. We also, I mean, we've told our employees that we're serious about this, and we do quite a bit of work with them around them generating the ideas. And like I said earlier, I think some of the very best or most innovative ideas around our business have come from our own employees. And as it should be, they're working in it every day, and they know where there's opportunities or they have great ideas. And so we created some, we do have kind of an internal development team, software development team that we stood up as part of our transformation efforts a few years ago. The very first thing that group turned on or put out, and we really did it as just kind of a test, but it kind of took off, is an application called Imagine DCP, where we ask the employees, imagine what the future of the company could or should look like, and tell us what that is from your perspective. And I mean, it was a simple application, but it had some, for us, it was a new thing to put stuff like that on somebody's phone and say, and hey, by the way, it's got some social features to it. You can upvote other people's ideas, and you can comment, and you can share things, and you can put pictures. And it really helped kind of stoke the fire of an innovation mindset and culture in the company. So I think we a lot of talking about it, and then doing some very specific things, and recognizing some of the good ideas that came from that, recognizing some of the employees involved with that. We've done that pretty publicly, and just tried to kind of continue to really encourage people to participate. Maybe one more point about this: we've also done quite a number of visits there to Silicon Valley. So both bringing our executive team, but also bringing some of the rest of our employees to Silicon Valley, and again, interacting with VCs and startups, and even some of the big tech companies, to really kind of get people in the mindset about the art of the possible, and get them to see and feel the energy. It's one thing for me or the ventures team to stand in front of a group of employees and talk about how exciting this can be. It's a whole different thing to go be in the middle of it and feel the energy and see some of the possibilities. So we've gotten quite a bit of mileage out of that as well.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I have to say that now in a pandemic time, that part is so hard to replicate, because it's true that we have access to all different ideas and easiness of cross-pollinating, but really the visual effect, the force of seeing the visual transformation that a startup of 2 years ago to today is becoming the largest disruptor of the market is unparalleled power. And when you see that day in and day out, you question even yourself. And so that's that transformation journey that seems pretty simplistic is actually has a strong ripple effect if put in place nicely. So
and I found that's one of the most difficult. I agree with you. It's one of the most difficult things about the pandemic. That kind of thing is as much as these technologies like we're using today have worked amazingly well to have conversations. Replicating that energy that you feel as part of one of those in-person visits and really seeing it and feeling it is that's been hard to do over WebEx or Zoom.
Yeah. Is your Imagine DCP still going? Is it an ongoing effort? as an
Yeah,
outlet?
it is actually. So, we had kind of a big initial surge of ideas from people, and then we got about working on those, and many of those ideas, and hey, many of the kind of big changes that we've made in the company came out of that platform. And interestingly, it did sort of tail off a little bit after the initial surge, and I think that was okay because we then had we had a lot of work for the team to do to help kind of create or turn some of those ideas and possibilities into reality. So we've actually just here recently over the last couple of months done a bit of a relaunch. And try to re-energize people around that, and it's great. I mean, we've gotten some good new ideas. We've got the way we manage it is we've got kind of a cross-functional internal team that meets weekly that sort of looks at the ideas that are coming in from different people across the company. So we've got a little re-energizing going on right now, and it's pretty exciting.
And that's actually true for the market in general, that we're going to show and share with the results of the Corporate Startup Star report. But it's pretty clear that the intra-preneurship programs are something that most advanced companies are reinforcing more and more and sophisticating to some extent. So some of that can become really a venture studio potentially. So when from ideas you move to the next step, how to move to concept to potential business model and to integration of new lines of products or to an existing business units, but really giving power, including potentially with funding, internal funding budgets, and it depends how you call it, but really to reinforce that internal effort and as one of the major effort when you talk about transformation from inside.
So that's I would say we're going through that same evolution. I mean, I think the initial phase, people tended to think they were handing over their idea to the transformation team or the innovation team for them to go make something happen. Mm-hmm. And now we're much more in the mindset of, no, how do we enable you? If you have a great idea, can we give you some seed funding and just sort of let you run with it? And how does the transformation team in the company has definitely evolved from a we're the doers of transformation to more we're the enablers of mm-hmm. transformation. So how do we incubate those ideas and help people throughout the company go make them happen? Because I mean, it really unleashes the full power of the company at that point, instead of it having been bottlenecked into hey, everything's got to sort of go through this transformation group. So we're definitely headed that direction.
Cool. A few minutes on the future. One area of the future that I would like to address with you is with the venture client model that you just described initially with your technology ventures. How do you think the venture client model could develop in the future? What level of efficiency and integration that today we haven't seen do you think that we can put in place? Again, the future is still to be written, and there are no right or wrong models. We see though that most of these models are in evolution, as the whole idea of startup accelerators initially were very strict, and now they have all different shapes and forms. So how do you think the venture client model can evolve?
Well, that's hard to predict, but I think for us, we really see ourselves participating in more of an ecosystem kind of model. And so hey, there's a lot of value to be created for companies like ours. We know, I often have people ask me like, hey, how far along in the transformation are you, or when will you be done? And I think for us, we'll never be done. And I think we're still early in the game. As much progress as we've made, it's still early days and things are evolving, as you say. So I think that venture client model, it's for us, it's working, and I think I think we will continue to be focused on. Hey, we're not out there investing, and we're not out there like thinking about crazy things. We're thinking about things that have some, relative direct applicability to our business. It may be more like H2 or H3 applicability, but we can see a path that's going to have impact in our business. And I think the creativity will continue to show up in terms of how those partnerships or working relationships are formed. And I'm not sure I've got a real strong viewpoint, Marco, on exactly what that will look like. I know even as we've gone down the road, it's evolved. I mean, I think initially we started out and just said, well, hey, we're just going to be a customer of startup XYZ or, whoever. And I think definitely we're beyond that in a lot of cases. I mean, rarely, I think it'd be rare going forward for us to say, well, hey, we're just going to sign what looks like a traditional customer contract with somebody, because I think we like the co-development model. So I think we're more and more doing agreements that look like that, where it's a joint development or a co-development, and some of the reason we like that is because we've had some success with it, and we feel good about those partnerships. Beyond that, I'm not sure where it's headed. I know it will continue to evolve, and I do really, I really like the model. I mean, we've learned some great things and have some great relationships with even some really small companies, and I think that's a lot different than it would have been, even 4 or 5 years ago in our business. We just didn't have those relationships, or we weren't open to it, or we had, procurement rules that said, hey, we won't deal with a company unless it's above a certain size. And we've kind of moved on beyond that at this point.
Well, one potential development that we've seen is to connect the intrapreneurship programs with the outside. So the venture client, where you start staffing from internal team, but then you use some of the components that are coming from outside, whether that's through an entrepreneurial residence or through strong collaborations where the core that you start within your intrapreneurship gets complemented with the outside resource, so you get the best of the two worlds. So,
for sure. And I think when we talk about co-development models, it can be pretty integrated like that. Like, I mean, I can think of one example where, I mean, some internally developed AI work. We've let an outside, and it's not really a startup, but an outside company start to use. But one of our DCP people is essentially acting as the product owner or the product manager inside that development ecosystem of that outside company. So yeah, you really see a blurring of the what would be the traditional lines between the company. I mean, for us, that's an unusual kind of relationship to kind of, hey, it's somebody that's paid by us and in our team and is acting essentially as a product owner and stewarding the product development of a product that's going to be in the market from a different company than us.
Great. So listen, to conclude, I think you already alluded to that or some of that, but are there any specific technologies, thinking about the future, not the current situation, where you think there will be a particular interest from you guys to look at, or being particularly bullish going forward?
So 2 areas maybe. One is just the power of artificial intelligence being applied in our business. We're so early in that journey. There's so much data. We have such a rich, we talk about internally and externally. I mean, I guess something like 7 billion data points a day coming into our systems, operational time series data points about all of our assets, and really tapping into that to be able to learn from it and predict the future, I think, and deal with our assets differently is a huge opportunity for us. That's, I think maybe that's super clear for some people. For us, really getting the power of that is still in the future quite a ways. And then, as I talked about earlier, everything around sustainability. So I think, maybe the shorter term time horizon around that, technologies around the carbon economy and carbon capture and utilization and sequestration, everything around that. We're doing a lot of work on that front, and a lot of kind of small pilots and trials of different technologies. There's so many sources of carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions in our business. And so really getting our arms around that and finding out what's viable and feasible and staying on top of the new developments, because it's moving quite quickly. And so I think that's an area where we're working super hard. And then a little bit longer term on sustainability, I talked about it earlier. I think kind of keeping our eye on hydrogen and working with some companies around that. It's pretty intriguing, and I think may have a big role to play, although I think that's a little further down the road, maybe more in the 5 to 10 year time horizon.
But looking forward to that future. Bill Johnson,
sure.
DCP Midstream, thank you so much. I appreciate your input. Congratulations again in your award, and hopefully see you here in person during your next transformational trip to Silicon Valley. Take care.
Looking forward to that, and thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.